Chris Coons, a Democrat of Delaware, member of the Foreign Relations Committee, and he joins me now. Senator, you have quite a bit of experience in international relations. I have never seen diplomatic negotiations sort of live posted the way that these have been. And part of the reason I think for that, the sort of traditional understanding is there's this idea in these negotiations that nothing is agreed to until everything's agreed to, so that you don't produce a situation in which any incremental development can then be waved around by the other side. They seem to be taking the alternate approach. Maybe this radical transparency will be better or worse, but what do you think about it?
Chris, I don't think it'll be better at all. In fact, the idea that J.D. Vance is somehow declaring getting IAEA inspectors back into Iran is a big breakthrough belies the fact that, as you said, they were in Iran with broad access under the Obama-Iran nuclear agreement, the JCPOA. What's the difference? Well, we've spent tens of billions of dollars on Trump's war of choice in Iran. We lost 14 American soldiers. We had hundreds injured, and there's been tens of billions of dollars of damage to American embassies, bases, and facilities. And the average American has higher costs at the pump and for groceries as a result. And we will soon have higher costs for every person in America who's growing things, as well as around the world, as fertilizer costs go up. So President Trump has put us in this strange pattern where first he or J.D. Vance makes some big announcement about a breakthrough, then the Iranians denounce it, disagree with it, and then Trump stays up all night rage tweeting about algae in the reflecting pool. This is no way to conduct serious negotiations with one of the largest state sponsors of terrorism, a country that, as a result of Trump's war in Iran, seems to be ending up in unbelievably a stronger strategic position because they've shown that they can shut down the Strait of Hormuz at a time of their choosing.
The Senate today voted for the first time successfully for essentially a war powers resolution to block the administration from resuming the war. 50 to 48, 4 Republicans joined the Democrats to support the measure. There were 2 Republican senators who missed the vote, and John Fetterman, the only Democrat to vote with the Republicans. I guess at this point it feels slightly moot. I wonder what you think the significance is.
So look, Chris, having both the House and the Senate pass bipartisan resolutions that say this war against Iran was illegal and the president should withdraw our troops is not legally binding on the president, given the technical way it was passed.
Yep.
But what matters is it sends a strong signal that there isn't enduring bipartisan support for this war, and that, frankly, the president needs to be held accountable for having wasted so much time and money and effort on a war that ultimately didn't produce any of the different aims that he put out for it. Part of the chaos of the run-up to this war, Chris, was that President Trump announced first it was a war of regime change. Remember him saying help is on the way to the thousands of Iranian protesters who were later mowed down by their own government? Or this was going to be a war that was going to eliminate, obliterate any potential future nuclear program. But now they're announcing small progress in terms of inspections. Or this was going to be a war that prevented their support for proxies in the region, for Hamas or the Houthis or Hezbollah. Yet that issue appears nowhere in this 14-point peace plan. Or we were going to finally fully constrain their ballistic missile program. Also not mentioned in the 14-point peace plan. This has been a chaotic mess from the beginning and is a chaotic mess today. And the resolution passed by the Senate today on a bipartisan basis is simply a recognition that there isn't bipartisan support for returning to this ill-conceived war against Iran.
So if it's a signal, right, that resolution today, the real, to me, the rubber hitting the road is on the appropriations bill. We've now got a number attached. They're sort of telegraphing they're going to have $80 billion from Congress to the Iran war as a supplemental. Are you a yes or a no on that?
Well, I've said to Secretary Hegseth, I will not vote for a bill, a supplemental, that is a backdoor authorization for the war against Iran. So the war's got to be over. That fails to provide munitions and support for Ukraine. I care deeply about standing up to Putin and defending Ukraine's fight for freedom. And President Trump is almost single-handedly helping Putin in his war of aggression against Ukraine. And frankly, there's lots of other things that President Trump proposed in his defense budget, from his new Golden Fleet to this Golden Dome concept, that I don't support and I won't fund. So we haven't received the supplemental request yet. There are lots of Democratic priorities that I want to see us appropriate and spend for. So I think I should say I'm open to negotiations.
Yes,
but I'm not going to support
the opening bid on a negotiation
supplemental just to appropriate and authorize a war that I was never consulted on and I didn't support.
There is another set of actions the Pentagon's been taking in our hemisphere that I think have faded from the front pages and from coverage, and I include myself in this, but has continued on the background, which are these strikes in the Caribbean on boats. The legal justification the Pentagon says is that these are acts of they have a wartime authorization to kill people who are narco-terrorists. I think the vast majority of legal experts say that there is no legal justification. This is tantamount to homicide. I don't think that's a totally hyperbolic thing to say. We had another strike this weekend. This one, there were 8 people on the boat. 2 died, 6 survived. We don't know if they were rescued. Is this just going to continue on in the background and it's just until Trump is left office?
Chris, thank you for raising that and for returning the focus of your viewers to this issue. There have been something like 210 people killed in the Eastern Pacific and the Southern Caribbean who are alleged to be narco-terrorists, but with very little evidence being presented to the Senate, to the Congress. And the idea that these are imminent and urgent attacks on the United States is belied by the fact that most of the trafficking that's happening north and east of Venezuela is actually heading towards Europe, not towards the United States. I've seen precious little evidence that suggests this is the sort of imminent threat that justifies the president using the same sorts of authorities that were used under presidents of both parties during the war on terror. I do recognize that drugs present a real lethal challenge to the American people, that we should be doing everything we can to interdict fentanyl, for example. But there's little proof that the trafficking in cocaine off the northeast coast of Venezuela is the same thing as deaths in American neighborhoods and cities and towns from fentanyl. And there are certainly less lethal ways that we could engage in partnership with our regional allies in interdicting drug trafficking.
All right, Senator Chris Coons, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Chris.